Oh, what a great new intro. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 19 of Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Joined today by my co-hosts of the Raw Prospect Podcast, Emmy Nixon, and a special guest, Patrick. Welcome, Patrick. Native LSU fan, correct?
Huge LSU fan.
Huge LSU.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's a good week for y'all.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I didn't expect to see our offense really go off like that. Jane Daniels with over 300 yards and Neighbors with over 230 is just insane numbers.
Big college football fans. That's what we love to see. We respect all fandoms on this show. There's no hard feelings. Well, there might be, but we don't openly express those.
Yeah, not until next year.
Not until
Right,
next year.
exactly.
So today, guys, it's going to look something similar to what Emmy and I have done the past couple of weeks. We're going to get into some buy or sell questions, basically hot takes that we've come up with ourselves that we either buy, agree with, or sell, disagree with, and they pertain to college football this season and what's happened so far. And then we're going to have a discussion about contenders in each conference. It's hard to tell after 3 weeks, but based on what we've seen and what we know, we're going to be talking about that. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Let's get started with buy or sell. Where do you guys want to start? You want to start local with the Horns? You want to start in the ACC? You want to start in the SEC, Pac-12?
Let's start with the Pac-12 because you got to treat them different because they're dying. So,
yeah. Okay. Well, our buy or sell question for today, as it pertains to the Pac-12, Washington State and Oregon State will do enough and will play spoiler to the Pac-12's college football playoff hopes. Buy or sell? We can start with Patrick.
Yeah, I'm going to have to sell on this. I really, really like Oregon State, but what they showed out against San Diego State this weekend, only winning 26-9. Washington State, though, has been making statements, but I think against teams like USC, Oregon, Utah, I just don't see these teams being able to compete. I think just the level of competition is still there, even though Oregon State got Oregon last year. I definitely see Oregon and USC kind of competing at those top two spots for the Pac-12 and definitely making a push for the playoff.
Emmy?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to agree and sell this one. I think DJU, when he was at Clemson, was very inconsistent, and based on what he's shown this year, it looks like he's improved for sure, but I still have to see it to believe it when it comes to DJU. That defense is really good, but when you're playing offenses like Oregon and USC, it takes a lot more than a really good defense to beat those teams. And then Washington State is probably the one to where if either of these two teams are to spoil chances of top contenders in the Pac-12, it would probably be Washington State, probably.
Yeah, I think I would sell as well. Really like Oregon State. Really like how they play. I like DJU. Change of scenery, I think, helps. And I like Washington State as well. They absolutely smushed Colorado State, who just gave Colorado a run for their money in double overtime this past week on the road. Now we'll see how that progresses throughout the season. I'm not sure that beating down a winless Colorado State team is all that impressive. But after what they showed on Saturday night, it looks like an impressive win right now in the immediate aftermath of that victory. So, it could happen, but I'm really high on USC, especially now that their defense seems to be getting better. And I love Washington. I think Washington is the best team in the country right now that nobody is talking about enough. And then you have to bring in teams like Utah once they get Cam Rising healthy. They're the two-time defending Pac-12 champions, and until proven otherwise, what Kyle Whittingham is doing with that program can't really be doubted. And then there are some other good teams in the Pac-12 as well. So I think we all three agree on this one, maybe for different reasons, but we all three are in the same vicinity. Let's go to the other coast, to the ACC. And this one is kind of open-ended. Buy or sell, Florida State has overtaken Clemson for supremacy in the ACC, not just for this year, but for years to come.
I think this one has a lot to do with how you feel about Clemson's recruiting tactics when it comes to NIL and it comes to the transfer portal. It doesn't seem like they're taking advantage of those things quite yet. And whether or not you think Florida State has overtaken them has a lot to do with whether or not Clemson is going to begin to embrace those things. Because I think there's still plenty of time for them, and they recruit well. The problem is they're not getting the high level 5 stars anymore without that extra incentive. And they play this weekend, so I'm not going to outright say Florida State's overtaken them, because at the end of the day, Florida State hasn't won in Death Valley in a long time. So I'm going to have to sell for now. But if Florida State wins big on Saturday, then things will be different.
Patrick?
Yeah, I'm actually going to have to buy on this one. Being an LSU fan and watching them play week one, that team is dominant. Now, when I think it comes to recruiting, I think Florida State, their use of the transfer portal is going to be continued in years to come. I really see Mike Norvell taking that program. And, Jordan Travis doesn't have a lot of eligibility left, but I really do see that team continuing to be a force. I'm, definitely not as confident seeing how they played against Boston College, but I think that away against Clemson, and they know they have something to prove. I think this game means a lot for the ACC, but I also don't see it as the defining game for who takes supremacy in the ACC. But I think at the end of the season, Florida State's going to be in the top 5, and it's going to be clear that maybe Dabo has some things to reevaluate, and I think a lot of Clemson fans are kind of calling for that too.
Yeah, this is an open-ended one, and it's hard to judge what's going to happen after the season, how Clemson is going to change their model of talent acquisition, which is sort of outdated in these days of 2023. As Emmy mentioned, as both of you guys mentioned, there was an article written in The Athletic about a week ago that talked about Clemson's resistance to adapting to not only the transfer portal, but NIL. And if you want to compete in college football nowadays, yes, recruiting is the lifeblood of college football. You have to be able to recruit well. Teams that are recruiting outside of the top 10 year after year after year, you don't often see winning national championships or contending for the college football playoff. You have to stack good recruiting classes, but in today's age of college football, you have to be good. You have to be diligent about going out into the transfer portal and filling your needs where possible. You don't want to build a roster off the transfer portal, although Dion might disagree with that. But you have to be able to fill holes in the transfer portal. And I think Florida State has overtaken Clemson, at least for this year. But I'm not pushing Clemson aside all the way just yet. I got to see what happens on Saturday. I got to see what happens the rest of the season. I'm not sure that one game, either way it goes, is going to change my opinion right now because it's just one game. But until the bottom line is until Clemson gets up to speed in their model of talent acquisition, using some more NIL, getting those donors involved, using the transfer portal more, because right now the bottom line is outside of Will Shipley, they don't have many dynamic playmakers, if at all. They don't have the T. Higgins of the world.
Yeah,
they don't have the receivers that they used to have. That's just the bottom line. And they could have fixed that pretty easily this offseason if they would have just embraced the transfer portal a little more. You see what Keon Coleman is doing at Florida State. That guy's a monster. And Clemson could have just as easily, with their resources, gone out and gotten him as Florida State did. So I think Florida State's the better team this year. I think they're going to win on Saturday, as I'll talk about later this week. But we don't know what's going to happen after the season. We have no idea. But I am really high on Mike Norvell and this Florida State program. So,
yeah, if I'm Clemson, Florida State isn't the only one I'm worried about. Duke is a good program. North Carolina is a good program. And Miami, they're building slowly, but pretty soon they're going to be right there.
Yeah. I think along with the Pac-12, the ACC is a little deeper than at least I originally thought coming in. And if I know Notre Dame's still an independent, but if you were to include their, I guess it's 5 games against ACC opponents in the conference, then it ends up being a pretty strong conference. I know you can't really do that because they're not technically a part of the conference officially, but you get my point. Okay, let's go to the SEC now. Our SEC native is probably not going to like this question very much, but remember, this is just a hot take that we came up with out of thin air. The SEC struggles so far are real. This year, it's a middling conference with Georgia still the top dog. Buy or sell? Who wants to start on this one?
I'll start. I think I'm totally going to have to sell this. I know I'm biased. I'm SEC biased. I get it. But, I think everybody's quick to jump the gun. We're only in week 3. LSU has only one loss to the number 3 team in the nation, number 4 now. I think Georgia, they always start off slow. Everybody always looks at Georgia and they're scared and they say, oh, Georgia's done. Trust me, they're not done. They do it every year. They don't play well against their non-conference opponents. It doesn't matter to them. Now for the rest of SEC, I think Bama has fallen off the totem pole. I think, watching how they played against South Florida was rough to watch. It's not the Bama that I'm accustomed to with, the TJ Yeldons, the Mark Ingrams, just running the ball and not caring who's in your way. But I think Ole Miss is really a team to watch. I think they are going to start making a push to where they can start moving up into that number 2 spot eventually. And I think it's just like the SEC is going to beat up on each other. We do it every single year, and whoever can come out with, 1 or 2 losses, you'll see them in the playoff, no doubt. So I think this conference is just having kind of an unexpected turn of events with Tennessee not doing well as well. And then, Bama, and we expected more out of South Carolina as well. So it's just one of those things that there are contenders in the SEC. And I think at the end of the year, there's going to be 3 teams in the top 10 from the SEC. And, don't make too quick of any assumptions.
Yeah, I think the thing about this question is there's no bad teams in the SEC. Like even Vanderbilt, even Missouri, those teams are competitive. Missouri just took out the defending Big 12 champs this past weekend. So I think a team like Ole Miss is interesting. They're still undefeated, I'm pretty sure, with Jackson Dart and what they're doing there. This conference isn't dead by any means. I'm gonna sell this also. I think when making this segment, I wanted to have some spicy topics in there, but this one's a little bit far-fetched. I think we can all agree on that. Georgia is still top dog, and then all the other teams are gonna beat up on each other. It's still a gauntlet when you're going through a SEC schedule.
Yeah, I'm totally selling this. At the end of the year, I guarantee you, the SEC will by far have the most players drafted into the NFL once again. They have the most quality top to bottom, even though I think you can say that so far, at least, the SEC is a little down from where they've been the past couple years. I think we can all agree somewhat to a degree on that. Now, could that change in 3 weeks? Yes, absolutely. But right now, I think they're a little bit down. It's a little bit of a slow start. But at the end of the day, top to bottom quality. Even though the Pac 12, I think, at least for this year, with their NFL quarterback talent in that conference and the amount of good teams in that conference, we all knew Washington was probably going to be top 15 good. We all knew USC was going to be in there. We didn't think it, but I mean, Utah is up there as well. What we weren't really expecting is for teams like Washington State and Colorado to be this good so fast. So I think the Pac-12 certainly has an argument right now as the second best conference, even over it's hard because Ohio State,
Big
Penn
Ten
State,
East.
and Michigan still exists. So the Big Ten East could be second, I guess, and then Pac-12 could be third. But look, the SEC is down from where it's been, but it's still the best conference, top to bottom, and it's only getting better next year. So that's what it is. Okay. I'm interested to hear what Patrick has to say on these buy or sell questions that pertain to a team that resides in Austin. That is the center focus of this particular podcast, as you probably heard at the intro of this show. All right. I'm interested to hear what y'all have to say about this question. I believe Sark still has, after this year, another 3 years on his contract. I believe it was a 6-year deal. But regardless, Steve Sarkisian has done enough to earn a contract extension. Who wants to start?
I'll start. I think this one's pretty simple to me. I think whenever you hire a new coach for any program in the country, especially one like Texas, you have probably 3 boxes you want to check off. One, can you recruit at a high level? And then 2, can you develop those players into eventually creating great football teams? And then 3, can you get marquee wins and eventually win your conference? And now he hasn't done the last one yet, winning the conference. But I think with Sark, he checks enough boxes to where you feel good about him moving forward long term, especially with the partnership with him and Pete Kwiatkowski with that defense. I think that's a partnership you're going to want to keep around if you're Texas.
Patrick?
I'm gonna have to sell.
Okay.
Just because, like you said, he's still got a couple years left on his contract. Now, at the end of the season, if he gets out of the end of the season with only 2 losses, okay, and playing in a New Year's Six Bowl, then I'd have a different take. But as of right now, I'm gonna say no. Y'all beat Bama. Amazing. I love to do it. We barely ever do it, right? Now, I mean, in the future that could change a little bit more, but I really do think that the recruiting is getting there. Y'all just got Colin Simmons. I mean, I wish we could have him, but y'all beat him out. So I think their recruiting and what they've done in the past couple of years is definitely moving back to the Texas standard. And I think eventually they're going to get there, but I wouldn't say right now that he's done enough to earn a contract extension. But I think it'll play out better at the end of the year. I think that'd be an interesting topic of conversation at the end of the year for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm selling this as well.
Interesting.
Look, love that Texas beat Rice, which is actually looking like a little bit better of a win now than it did right after that game. We know Wyoming is at least a decent group of 5 team. Now, that doesn't excuse the fact that Texas was tied going into the fourth quarter at home against them. But that team's not like a Louisiana Monroe, who Texas has had on their schedule in years past. They are a competitive group of 5 team. So give respect to Wyoming. And then you beat Bama. And Bama's probably more vulnerable than they've ever been, at least in the past half decade to decade. That offensive line is, everyone talked about it as one of the better offensive lines that we probably going to see this college football season. They talked all about getting back to establishing the run, just playing the Bama type football that they played with guys like Mark Ingram and Derrick Henry. That really hasn't happened yet. At points in times in that game against South Florida was actually dominating the line of scrimmage, believe it or not, which is unheard of. But I think they made the right decision going back to Jalen Milroe, as Saban announced today. They saw their other 2 quarterbacks and they were like, nope, back to Jalen Milroe. But at the end of the day, I like what Emmy said. Sark, he checks the recruiting box. I think he checks the hire the staff box. An important part that people don't talk about enough is you got to hire the right people. And that's what Charlie Strong and Tom Herman failed to do. Just period. And then also, he struggled to win on the road. Now, it's gotten better recently, but he needs to prove that he can win on the road consistently for an entire season. I think you can't give a coach an extension until he wins a championship or bowl game of significance. Sark hasn't even made a bowl game, but got dominated by Washington. And I just got to see more. Now, I agree with what Patrick said. I think if at the end of the year, if Texas is 10-2 or better, we'll see where that goes as they're entering conference play. But if they're 10-2 or better and say they win the Big 12 championship and they play in a New Year's Six Bowl, then yes, then you can talk about giving him that extension. But not that Chris Del Conte would do it right now. I don't think he would. But still got to see more. And if I'm really going to be on the pessimistic side, I'd say I want to see what happens to Texas when, because with success comes teams. Teams are going to come poaching at guys like Pete Kwiatkowski. Teams are going to come poach guys like, Kyle Flood, the offensive line coach and co-play caller, who's done an excellent job of developing, not only recruiting guys up front, but developing that talent. Kelvin Banks is already an All-American. So we got to see how they handle success too. If this season turns out like what most Texas fans are hoping it to be, a double-digit win season, a Big 12 championship, and at least a New Year's Six bowl game, what comes with that success? And what happens when however many players that are going to leave this Texas team after this year go to the NFL? Can you replenish that talent and develop those guys? So if he wins the Big 12 championship, I'd give him the extension. But if I'm really being on the pessimistic side, as I've learned to kind of do as it pertains to this program, you got to wait at least a little longer.
Yeah, we don't want a Jimbo Fisher situation.
No, we don't want that. Okay, last buy or sell question. Also pertains to Texas. This is an interesting one. Texas will go back to underachieving when or if Quinn Ewers leaves. And we expect that to be after this season. So buy or sell?
Well, I think a lot's going to depend on the defensive side of the ball. Whenever you're transitioning from quarterback to quarterback, you need a lot of different things to happen in order to like maintain a level of success. And the number one thing would be the defense. I think the defense would need to step up to, I think right now it's top 20 level. I think it would have to maintain that or even get better from that. Just from what I've seen, it seems like it'll be Arch Manning next year. It could be Malik Murphy, but we'll see on that. I think it's hard to say because in the spring games, it's hard to really evaluate anything. So right now, I think I'm gonna kind of cheat on this question and say to be determined.
Patrick?
I'm gonna buy on this. The reason I'm going to say that is because of the change in conference next year. I think that's a huge thing. When we're looking at the future of college football, we want to think about it and we want to jump to, but I don't think we realize how fast it's coming around the corner. I think that Texas is going to have, their problems in the first couple years of the SEC. I think they're going to have problems in recruiting. I do think Sark's a great coach, but I think when it comes to year in, year out, playing, these tough teams, like playing Georgia, playing Bama, playing, even Ole Miss and some of those teams that can sneak up on you, like the Missouris and, Arkansas and, Mississippi State even. They did it to LSU a couple years back. I think that in terms of comparing it to past seasons, it will be an underachievement, but eventually Texas will, kind of start to get used to the SEC and get used to how things, things are playing out. And I think a big thing is going to be recruiting and if they can keep guys in Texas.
Yeah, I'm actually going to lightly buy on this one. Lightly. Now, my question is, if Texas goes out this year, say they go 10-2, 11-1, they win the Big 12, and say they at least make a New Year's Six Bowl. 2 years ago, when Texas went to Fayetteville and got absolutely blasted by Arkansas, and I think Sark's second game as head coach at Texas, people were saying, and they hadn't quite made the move yet, but it was starting to, there were murmurs about it. People were saying, oh my God, Texas is far from ready for the SEC. And after that Bama game last Saturday, people had a change in tune. Now, whether you agree with that or not, that's a different story for another day. Here's what I think. The question is, how do expectations change? Because if we're going to say they underachieve, how do the expectations actually change if, say, they go out and win a Big 12 championship this year and they get to a New Year's Six Bowl? Say they had like an 11-win season with the Big 12 championship. They haven't done that like since 2009. Now, I know there was the 2018 Sugar Bowl season when they beat Georgia, but that was all right. They didn't win the Big 12 championship that year. So my question is, it's hard to answer this question because you can't say a team overachieves or underachieves if we don't have a defined set of expectations for that team. Now, let's just say that for the sake of this question, Texas goes out and they win 10 games, they win a Big 12 championship. So they're 10-2 in the regular season. They win the Big 12 championship game. So that's 11 wins. And then say they lose to maybe they have a rematch with Bama in the Fiesta Bowl or something, and they lose that. I don't know. Or maybe they face LSU and they lose that game. Well, I think going into next year with the way that Texas has recruited to this point, And I think the ripple effects of Texas winning a Big 12 championship game in recruiting and with all the resources that Texas actually has in NIL, and, Sark's ability to go out and use the transfer portal to get guys like A.D. Mitchell and Jalen Catalon, those expectations will rise. I think Texas, whether it's, whether you believe it or not, will be expected to win 9-10 games next year in the SEC. I think it's quite possible that when Ewers leaves, they will have some underachieving years. I'm confident enough to say that, but I don't think it's going to be what it's looked like in the past decade, because Texas is a different animal now in recruiting than they were 5 years ago under Tom Herman. Herman did great in recruiting. The problem was he didn't recruit where you need to be good. He didn't recruit the offensive line. He didn't get guys like Colin Simmons. He didn't get guys like Kelvin Banks. He didn't get guys like DJ Campbell. That's just the bottom line. He didn't go out, and I know the transfer portal is relatively new, but he didn't get, the elite guys like Jonte Cook and Cedric Baxter. It's just the bottom line. So I think there will be some underachieving years in the SEC, but I don't think it'll be year after year after year after year after year of underachieving.
Yeah, I think I could see some underachievement as well, but I think it'll be in a different way than what it used to be, because Texas is in a much better spot with their front seven, with their offensive line, than what it was before. So no matter the case, I think we're going to be able to play competitive football in the SEC. Whether or not we win those close games or not is kind of up in the air.
And another interesting part of this is we know that next year it's going to be still an 8-game conference schedule when Texas and OU enter, right? And right now it's set up to where you alternate, every other year you play those teams home and away. But what happens, maybe 2 years down the road when they change it to a 9-game conference schedule? And here's what I will say. I think Patrick made a great point. It's easy for a team such as Texas, which is with as much talent as they have, to get up for a singular game against an opponent like Alabama. It's very easy to get up for a singular game on a singular week, right? They did it last year, although they lost that game to Bama. They did it this year, and they won the game against Bama. But when you have to go, to Tuscaloosa, and then you got to play at Ole Miss, and then you got to play Missouri, who looks like a pretty good team right now, and then you got to go play Vanderbilt on the road in Nashville, and then you got to come back home and play A&M. Like, the week-to-week grind of the SEC is what people are talking about. And Texas, you can't quite give them – I mean, I'm a diehard Texas fan, but I'm trying to be as objective as possible here. Texas has struggled to deal with the day-to-day, week-to-week grind of the Big 12 up until maybe this year. So you can't quite give them the benefit of the doubt there. So I can see where that week-to-week grind of playing tough team after tough team after national championship contending team after national championship contending team with the same level or comparable levels of talent could bring in, some rough years of underachievement. But I don't think it's going to be, and maybe this is the optimistic side of my Texas fandom coming out. I don't think it's going to be a decade of just bad football. I don't know. We'll see. I'm focused on this year. So just game to game, let's win Baylor this weekend. Let's make sure we don't embarrass ourselves there. Okay. Well, I didn't really have anything prepared exactly, but what I think we can do for the next 20-ish minutes, if you still have time, Patrick, is we can just have a discussion about what we've seen so far in college football, what we think, what are our own hot takes maybe, and who we think the actual contenders are after, say, 3 weeks. Small sample size, but a lot has happened so far. So does anyone have anything right off the top of their head they want to get off their chest?
My declaration off the jump is I think Penn State is the best team in the Big Ten.
I mean, I can definitely see it. I was actually going to say that Penn State is probably second best right now, in my opinion. But I still think Michigan.
They still got to prove it. For sure.
They still gotta prove it. But I think, like, from what we've seen so far, that it comes off as Penn State is the best team. But I mean, when you play cupcake games like Michigan does, and then when you finally get into the November months and you start, really grinding against teams and start, beating them down with that run game, I think it's going to become a little bit more clear that Michigan's up there.
Definitely, yeah.
But I think this weekend for the Big Ten is going to be huge because it's going to be able to get that thermometer check on Ohio State that we've been waiting for, because they beat Youngstown State last week, and that's great. They played, a kind of tight game, I think, against like Western Kentucky it was. I mean, I think it's really interesting to see what McCord is going to come out and do. But I think, in my opinion, Notre Dame is light years ahead of what they've been in the past, having quarterbacks like Everett Golson and, having these, kind of mediocre, get you a couple wins every once in a while. Right. Oh, yeah. As a Saints fan, I know Ian Book very well. But I think Sam Hartman, and especially like their running game, is nothing to mess with. I think Notre Dame is going to like really, really blow the doors off this weekend.
That game's in South Bend. It's one of the bigger games of the weekend. On a weekend where there are a lot of big games. There's Colorado and Oregon. I mean, I think Oregon's going to win that game by probably 2 touchdowns. But I mean, still, that wherever Dion goes, there's going to be talk and a lot of it. And just get used to that. Then you got Iowa, I think, playing Penn State. That should be interesting with the defense that Iowa has. We'll see how Drew Aller, who I do really like, and I think Penn State is dangerous this year more so than they've been in years past because they're more dynamic at the quarterback position. And I love Nick Singleton as a running back. But until they prove that they can beat at least one of Michigan and or Ohio State, we will just have to see. I mean, we're going to wait and see. But I do agree with Patrick in that I do think Notre Dame is for real this year. I'm blanking on their coach's name. Oh, Jesus.
Marcus
Freeman. Marcus
Freeman, yep.
What he did going out and getting Sam Hartman in the transfer portal was brilliant. And I think guys like Audric Estime with a bunch of NFL players on that offensive line to run behind with some talented receivers that they've recruited and have done a good job of doing with sort of the restrictions that they have in recruiting in that area of the country, and with the academic standards of Notre Dame, it's been quite impressive. After Freeman had a rough start to his coaching tenure at Notre Dame with the loss to Marshall last year and the blowout in the bowl game the year before, but they finally have a quarterback that could be an All-American if Notre Dame finds themselves in prosperous places later on the season, including maybe the college football playoff. And if they go through their schedule and they run the gauntlet and they're 12-0, they'll make the playoff because they don't have to play a conference championship game. And, I mean, they got some tough games on their schedule. Not only do they have Ohio
Mhm.
State, I think they play USC later on in the season, and maybe
They play Clemson.
another. Yeah, they do play
Yeah.
Clemson. Regardless of what we think of Clemson, I mean, you can't totally discount them yet.
Yeah, definitely not.
So I do love Notre Dame. I think they're in that group of teams right now with like Washington and maybe a couple other teams that no one's really talking about a lot on the national scale as much as they are, say, Nick Saban in Alabama or Georgia and Kirby Smart, or even Texas and Steve Sarkisian, or even LSU with Brian Kelly. They're in a group of teams that we still got to see a little more because I don't think Notre Dame's strength of schedule to this point has been anything special either. Because we talked about Ohio State, and that's certainly interesting. So I think this weekend in South Bend will be I'll have my eyes on that game for sure, along with the Penn State Iowa game. I think there are a couple other games. Florida State is playing Clemson. Oregon is playing. Oregon's playing Colorado, and then I think UCLA is playing Utah. And there's one or two more actually on the schedule.
From 1 p.m. to 10 p.m., we're going to just be loaded with college football.
Anything else? I mean, Patrick, you're a Saints fan. I don't want to keep you from watching your game or anything.
No, it's all good. It's one of those Monday night games where I'm kind of expecting a slow game where I hop on my phone maybe second half, not pay too much attention. But that's just how primetime games are, I think.
Well, I do have some good news for you. The Saints are down 3-0, but they are driving. They just entered the red zone, and Taysom Hill just had a good run. So
that's great for the money that we pay him. I'm sure hope he's running the
QB
ball.
money.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Shaq.
Taysom Hill always brings back that name. Just brings back bad memories for me because of what he did to Texas all those years ago when we just couldn't tackle anything.
Hey, any other college football takes? It can be anything. I mean,
I got a question just real quick. After what happened in Colorado, right? Huge win for Deion, for the brand, whatever you want to call it. But as number 18 ranked, and you squeak out a win in double overtime, I'm sure, for our standards of football, for Texas and for LSU, all I'm saying is I'm not rushing the field. Now, I will say that we did it against Ole Miss last year, but Ole Miss was ranked pretty high, and we weren't ranked at all. Now, should we have done it? Probably not. But I think Colorado's fans storming the field against a 0-1 Colorado State team, I get it. You want to have fun and right college life. Who cares? Run on the field. But in the SEC, we take a fine for it, so it's not as easy to just hop on the field.
After that.
Yeah, I just was like, I watched it and I saw the fans running on the field, and I was like, well, time to go to Twitter and hear everybody's takes on everything.
I mean, you just got to remember where they were. They were 1-11 last year. I went to a tiny school in Kansas where we were like the worst NAIA football team in the country for 4 years straight that I was there. And then 2 weeks ago, we won our first football game in 4 years. And you better believe they stormed the field after that one, man. I mean, when you're going through the struggle, it's rough.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
You guys want to see a field storm? I'm telling you right now, if Texas loses a road game this year, say this weekend at Baylor, which I don't think will happen, but maybe a game later on this season, like when they go to Fort Worth to play TCU. You want to see a field storm with all the hate that's coming Texas's way for leaving the conference and going to the SEC? You haven't seen nothing yet. I'm telling you right now, you haven't seen nothing yet. But I do agree. I mean, I give Colorado kind of a pass because, I mean, as Amy mentioned, it's historically actually a pretty good program. But for the past half decade, Colorado has been a stomping mat. I mean, they've been a doormat of a program. And those fans are kind of drunk right now because of Dion and the attention that Dion brings to the program. And guys like Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. Now, would I storm the field after beating a winless team? Absolutely not. Do I think it's a little bit of a rookie move? Absolutely. But I think we'll give them a pass this time. They're a little new to this, I think. At least these fans are. But we'll see what happens going forward. I mean, didn't Missouri storm the field after beating K-State?
I mean, I will say if somebody hits a 61-yard field goal,
that is true.
I might have the urge to hop over the fence really quick.
That is true. A college kicker hitting a 61-yard field goal, you don't see that very often.
No.
But I think this whole field storming thing is kind of just a nothing conversation. I mean, I get like the point of it. I get why people want to talk about it. And in certain circumstances, I think it's warranted. But I don't know. I think it's kind of just like a people want to get mad at something type of thing.
Yeah, I hear you on that. It's I don't know.
Anything else?
What do y'all think about USC right now? I know their games are super late, but I recorded that game from Saturday that they played and then watched it back. Their defense is showing signs of life, and that means trouble.
Yeah, I think USC is going to be, at least for the next couple weeks, they're going to stay in that number 5 spot. And I think by the time that the college football playoff, their rankings come out in that weekend right before that November 4th weekend, Halloween weekend is going to come out. I think that the committee is going to put them in the top 4. I really do think that the defense is something that USC has not had in a while. That's for sure. But I would like to see it against, a little bit higher level. I mean, Stanford, right? You played San Jose State. It's not too great, but I think like November 11th is going to be one of the biggest weeks in college football. USC at Oregon, like Eugene is going to be absolutely rocking for it. And I really do think that that's when we'll see how well tested USC is. And especially the Battle of Los Angeles, when they play UCLA, we'll see how they play. But I think they're going to beat up on Arizona. They're going to beat up on Arizona State, and they're going to look good. It's just kind of how they're going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I said this before the season. USC has an average defense because they haven't even been average to this point, at least. They've been one of the worst defenses in FBS, actually, when you look at the numbers. But I will say, I mean, you got to play who's in front of you. And aside from maybe a half in their first game against, I forget who it was against, where they gave up like 7 yards of carry in the first half, and it looked like same old.
I think it was San Jose State.
Yeah. They gave up, I think it was over 7 yards of carry in the first half or the first quarter, and they looked like same old USC, and everyone kind of had a little bit of overreaction to that. I will say the past couple weeks and near the end of that game, they've looked like I hesitate to say good because it's hard to qualify what a good defense is in
They
college.
look competent, I think is the right word.
And, I got to see it against better competition. But you're right. They looked more competent. Tackling's gotten a little better. I think Bear Alexander has changed the tenor of how they play up front on that defensive line. Mason Cobb, I think, has been hurt, but the talented transfer from Oklahoma State, the linebacker, should help with that when he gets back on the field, either this week or the next week. I mean, look, you just got to have a defense that bends but doesn't break, right? That offense is going to score 40 to 50 points pretty much every game. Like, they're just that good. You just got to have a defense that makes the necessary plays can get off the field on third downs, can prevent teams from getting in the end zone 2 or 3 times a game, can rush the passer a little bit, and doesn't miss 15 tackles a game. So, yeah, I mean, USC is dangerous. They're a monster waiting to erupt. They're a volcano waiting to erupt if that defense is average this year. So, yeah, I mean, I would have them in my top 5 right now. I mean, I think at this point, you could probably switch around Florida State, Texas, USC, however you really want to. And I wouldn't really argue with you. Although Florida State's, I think, got it's hard. I'm not going to argue about most impressive win right now. But Florida State and Texas have more impressive resumes right now than USC does. So I don't know. Anything else? Any parting shots?
My parting shot is I think LSU is still going to be in the SEC championship game. You're going to like that take. I think Jaden Daniels, I mean, it was a bit of a stumble, and I mean, it was week 1, wasn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was just, they weren't quite there yet offensively, but now they're getting Malik Neighbors involved the way they need to. That offense is cooking now. So that LSU team, I mean, if they, go on a run here, they can sneak back door into the college football playoff somehow still. I'm not ruling that out.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm hoping for. I think these next 3 weeks are going to be an extreme tone setter for the season. I mean, I'm confident against Arkansas because they're actually looks like they're going to be out their starting running back that just got reported today. So, I think that's going to be a good win. I'm, hoping for a good win this weekend, especially at home. It's going to be loud. Fans are going to be, how do I say this, intoxicated a lot. But I think especially going away at Ole Miss and then having to go away to Missouri, which a lot of fans forget about, that's going to be a nice stretch of 2 away games that if we can come out 2-0, I think we're going to be ready for anything.
Yeah, I agree. I think LSU will probably end up playing Georgia in the title game as long as Georgia doesn't slip up anywhere, which I don't think they will. I don't expect that to happen, but I mean, crazier things have happened before.
Slip up for Georgia is winning by 10.
I think Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in the conference. If he plays like he did, if they can just kind of bottle up 90% of what they did against Mississippi State, like, who's beating LSU? So I don't know. I think it's going to be a great weekend in college football. Patrick, you were awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. You're welcome back anytime. Just shoot me a text.
Yeah.
And we'll try to get you on. And we'll see where it goes. We're through 3 weeks. We still got 3/4 of the season left. And then we got conference championships and bowl season, and then college football playoff and national championship. So I think this season, at least to this point, it seems as wide open as a season has been in recent memory in terms of, I think, the heavyweight belt in terms of a dominant team to emerge from the pack has yet to be claimed. at least right now. Even though if I'm giving anyone the benefit of the doubt, it's Georgia, right? So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But thank you, Emmy. Thank you, Patrick. Hopefully the Saints win.
Thank y'all. Who dat and go Tigers.
Yep. Respect. And we will see you next time on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Hook 'em horns. Peace out, y'all.
Peace out.